Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the Buzz with Busy Crochet. So glad that you're here. We're starting just a couple minutes early because we can. If you are watching on YouTube later and you want to stay informed, make sure that you click the subscribe button. All of today's links for our guest designer are going to be notated in the description box below for later on. And let's go ahead and bring Kristin, and we're going to be talking with Kristin Jones today from the Vintage Crochet Company. She is located in the UK, and I can't wait for you to meet her.
Hi.
Hi, Kristin. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
Absolutely. So I would love to know anything that you're comfortable with. Tell us a little bit about who you are and, your family, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so I'm Kristin.
Mhm.
I'm based in Cheshire, which is in the northwest of England, just south of Manchester. And I live between here and our cottage, which we have in North Wales on Anglesey, which is about 2 hours drive away from here. And that's where I do a lot of my crochet. So I'm mum to 3. I have a daughter who's a teacher in her 30s. My son is a university lecturer, and he's also in his 30s. And then my youngest is still at home, and
Mine too.
he's in retail management.
Okay,
So
cool.
it's quite diverse. And I have 2 lovely grandsons. My eldest 2 are both married. I have 2 lovely in-laws, lovely son-in-law and daughter-in-law, and 2 lovely grandsons who are both just coming up to 2, one from each of them. So yeah.
So they're kind of the same age.
And I have a husband as well. But he always
so your grandkids are really close in age then?
They are. There's 4 months between them.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So, yeah. So they both came along.
I'm sorry.
Both came along at once.
Yeah, well, that's handy. It was always nice to have cousins to grow up with. So tell us, how many years have you been crocheting?
Oh, I've got to say over 50 years.
Well, that's awesome.
I learned. I was a knitter first of all. My mum was a knitter and taught me to knit when I was very small. So before I went to school, I could knit. But my mum's sister was very, very crafty, and she's the one that taught me how to crochet when I was about 7 or 8. So over the years, I've done both. Made things for my children, for myself, lots of gifts for colleagues that were having babies, until I had to give up work, unfortunately, just coming up to 8 years ago now.
Okay.
And that's when the crochet became full-time.
Well, that's wonderful. So I know that you, just because I've been following you for quite some time, I know that you kind of specialize in children's clothing. And was that born out of becoming a grandma?
I've always had an interest in children's clothes, and I like projects really that you can finish quite quickly. What started me originally was the reason I had to leave work when I was in my 40s was that I had a brain tumor removed, which left me completely deaf on one side. And I wear a bone anchored hearing aid, which is an implant into my skull. And I realized that I couldn't wear a hat in the winter. So I made myself a hat that was suitable to wear. And then a couple of other people who I knew then through the deaf community said, please make me one.
That's awesome.
So I started making, I've got one here to show you. So they have a little, this is a little hole in the hat here. And the hearing aid is attached to my head there. It's the same color as my hair, so you can hardly see it.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
But if you put a hat over them, you get a lot of feedback and whistling. So I started, that's how the Vintage Crochet Company started. I made and sold the hats through my Etsy.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then as that went on and I did more and more crochet, that's when I started to design about the time that the grandchildren were coming along. And the rest is history.
Oh, that's very cool. Can I ask you a little bit more about the hats that you do? Do you have a pattern that you can share with anybody?
I don't have a pattern simply because I make them with a specific yarn
Okay.
that I've used for a long time now. And because of the placement of the hearing aids, especially some people have them bilaterally. So
Okay.
because different yarns, as we all
Mhm.
know, make up differently, because of the
Sure.
placement and how sort of tight the holes have to be, it's not been something that I've been able to give enough time to sit
Yeah.
down and do a sort of multifunctional pattern as
Yeah.
yet. It's always there on the back burner, and I do get asked every winter. Somebody will say, do you do a pattern for these? So it is something that I am thinking about,
Mhm.
but I'll have to be very careful how I approach it. It's not just as simple as writing up a
Sure.
pattern.
Absolutely. It's something that definitely requires a little bit more sensitivity than say something else. So is this, I know that you said that you have it on the back burner, but do you feel like you will be working on a pattern that I mean, and I really wanted to ask because do you have a newsletter that we can sign up for so that when you do put this out, we can.
I don't as such.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's I have a website, and sort of
Okay.
anything that I do, would sort of obviously go through onto my website
Sure.
and sort of
Well,
take it from.
and I did say before we started that all of those links are going to be provided in the description box in
Yeah.
the YouTube. So absolutely they can connect with you there. Okay, so that kind of created your business. What and your grandsons transitioned you. So I am, like I said, I'm a mini fan of yours. I shouldn't say
Thank
mini.
you.
I'm a pretty big fan of yours because I've got a whole like collection of your patterns, and my two favorites are your Robin Romper and your Baby Duffel. And I have, you don't have a Robin Romper,
I
right?
don't know. They've
No.
all been given to little girls, unfortunately.
Yeah, mine too. Mine are all gone. The only ones I have that I've got a bunch made up of, this is where I do my videoing, is the um Baby Duffel. It is just the most fun pattern to make. I absolutely adore this one.
That
And
was my very first pattern that went on sale,
it
and
is just the cutest thing.
it is one that I need to revisit, I think, and make it available in bigger sizes. And that's certainly something that I want to look at sort of over the next few months. Is
Yeah,
sort of go back and just tweak it ever so slightly and make it available. Sort of.
I
I have a
have
lot of
bumped it up the hook
inquiries.
size to take it up a little bit.
Yeah, it's easy to do because it's only
Mhm,
in a 0 to 3 month the pattern. But if you use a
mhm.
bigger hook or an Aran yarn,
Yeah, yeah, I've got a couple of different jeepers,
mm,
a couple of different sizes here, but that's just because I changed my hook size, my yarn size, all that stuff. Thing I did want to ask you about though is because you have to have so many buttons for this particular pattern, what are your thoughts on buttons?
well,
Because I personally love a vintage button and
I
I'm a,
I have jars of buttons all over the house.
I'm
Yeah.
sure. Oh, how fun.
Yeah, I'm a button person. When I was a little girl, my grandmother had a metal biscuit tin that she'd
Mm,
collected buttons in, and I used to play with it for hours, sort of running my fingers through the buttons and counting them out
mm.
into patterns. And I have a real love of buttons. I'm an avid button collector.
Oh, that's so funny because I am too, and I didn't know if I was the only one out there that was kind
There
of a
was
weird collector of things, but I just have a thing for vintage buttons, and when I look at them, I think, "What was this on?" And because you can see the fabric where they cut it out, and, a lot of mine have come from, during the Great Depression when, like, the people that grew up in that era, they saved everything. So
mm,
you've got so many really old buttons, and actually some of the sweaters that I have here have got some of those really old buttons on there. The pink one has these really beautiful glass black buttons, but I find them so fascinating because I think about, where did they come from?
mhm. Yeah, I'm very much the same. And I do, when I sort of throw clothes away, I always snip all
Oh,
the
do you?
buttons off. And yeah.
I so rarely throw anything away. I just keep everything forever. Oh, so of all of your patterns that you have, oh, and I would like for you to show us some of your patterns because I know that you've
Okay,
got a couple of sweaters there.
I do. I have my most popular one
Mhm.
is one called Ahoy There, which is a nautical,
It's so cute.
sorry, I'm going the wrong way, sailor design. And that also makes up in a plain colour as well. So it does
See,
both.
that's what I love is the versatility that you can do just about anything with these, and they turn out so cute.
Another one that I have is this one, which I designed when my second grandson
Super cute.
was on the way. This one is called Terry. And another one that's just about to be, I'm just at the final stages of preparing this one. And this one has a lovely sort of ridged neckline. This one's called Georgie.
That one's a little bit reminiscent of your Robin Romper, because doesn't your Robin
Yes,
Romper
it
have
is.
that
It's a
same?
similar neckline.
Yeah, and I really like
Yeah.
that little raised, the little mini, what is that called? I just said it earlier. Turtleneck.
Yeah.
It's got kind of
Yeah,
a
it
mock
is.
turtleneck on it.
Yeah, it's got quite a high neck.
That's
So
cute. I love it.
catch all the
Alrighty.
drizzle.
So what would be your favorite? What design do you absolutely love the best?
I think my favourite with you is the baby duffel, simply because it was the first. And
It's so cute. So I'm gonna just show everybody what they can get in the baby duffel pattern because it's just so cute. So you get this really awesome sweater pattern that has this little hood on it, and it works up super intuitively. So I'm just plugging this pattern for people for you because I absolutely adore it. And it is a top down, super simple one piece design. Like there's literally no sewing on this. So you just like your sleeves, everything, it just works up. And then there's a little hat that goes with it. And then you get these little middies as well. It's such a cute design, Kristin. I can't get over it.
thank you.
You are absolutely welcome. Tell me what your favorite part of designing is. Like, what's the best thing about it for you?
Well, I like the playing. If I can use, I mean, at the moment I've been sitting here all afternoon because I'm doing a design brief at the moment, and I love making up like little pattern square. I don't know if you can see that. It's got little holes in it. It's
yeah.
It's not very clear.
Oh, that's cute. Yep, I can see it. Isn't that funny how everything's so backwards on the computer?
Yeah, little zigzag. This is one that I've been playing with for a while. I'm just about to write this up. This is a baby.
That is adorable.
But yeah, and I love granny squares. I have a granny square collection, which is
Do you?
yeah, which is I always do any leftover yarn that I have. I always have to finish. I don't have sort of like leftover yarn collections. I have to finish everything, so I tend to make it up into granny squares. And then I've always got sort of blankets that can be made up in next to no time if I'm needed.
That's a really great idea.
And it's easier to store them than it is to store little ends of yarn. I never throw any yarn away. Even the bits that I cut off the end go into jars.
Oh my gosh. What do you use those for?
I stuff that, for making soft toys and things. It sort of ekes out the stuffing. So yeah, so I never throw anything away. When it comes to yarn hoarding, I hoard every last little bit.
You have a really special relationship with your yarn.
I do. I'm in a room surrounded by it. So
yeah. But that's the best part about having, a yarn business. So, but I noticed on your website that you have crochet classes. Is this something that you only do in person, or do you do them online as well?
It's something that I did before the COVID epidemic, and I've not got back to it as yet. It's something, but I do a thing called a crafternoon tea, where I'll bring a couple of ladies round to the house and we have tea and cake and chat. And
Oh my gosh, I want to come.
teach them from scratch, and we make a dishcloth or a baby bonnet or something that's relevant to them. And I provide them with all the materials and hooks and everything.
Is it a multi-class, or is this something where people tend to just pick it up quickly and they can walk out with a product, or do you meet more than once?
Yeah, no, I tend to do it so that they can walk away with something that they've made.
How nice.
But then that gives them enough crochet knowledge to be able to go on and explore more.
Yeah, that's exciting.
I'm hoping to do some online sort of tutorials, but I've not.
Time just runs away, doesn't it?
Time runs away. And of course, I'm of an age that sort of embraces technology, but, I've still got a lot to learn, shall we say.
Me too. Me too. That's probably the part about my crochet business that is the hardest for me, because the designing part, not a problem. I'm having fun. But when it gets down to the having to do the computer stuff, that just, it sucks a lot out of you sometimes.
Well, you can spend, I can spend a day writing a pattern up. It's, can lose a whole day and still be sort of no further on than you were in the morning. And then come back to the next day and start all the mistakes.
Absolutely. So I just wrote some notes. I know I keep looking off to the right, but I've got notes over here because I want to make sure that I hit certain parts. On your Instagram, you have got some of the best beach pictures. Is that the place where you're crocheting at your cottage?
It is. It's Anglesey, which is the little lump just at the top corner of Wales. And we have a cottage there. We've gone there for about 20 odd years since the children were small. But we bought a cottage there about 10 years ago. And that's my sort of real happy place. I do a lot of my designing there.
It seems like you've got a very nautical feel to some of your patterns. And
yeah. Well, seaside,
Yeah.
I've even I crochet on the beach as much as I can. It's a very rocky coastline, so you can find places to hide away and
neat.
And sit and crochet for hours.
That sounds lovely. I grew up in Wisconsin, which is an extremely wooded area. And it's mostly cows and fields of corn and trees. So I grew up in the woods. And did you grow up around the sea, so it's like a comfort place for you, or is it something that you discovered as you grew?
I suppose being in England, you're never really too far from the sea.
Okay, I suppose you're an island.
Yeah, so I mean, the cottage is only sort of 2 hours away by 2 hours drive, or less really, an hour and 3/4. I live very close to Manchester, sort of North Cheshire. We're actually just on the outskirts of Manchester Airport, so it's quite an urban area that I live in. So it's nice to get away and peace and quiet.
No breathing that air.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best part. So tell me, what made you choose the name Vintage Crochet Company?
I have collected books, knitting and crochet books from charity shops and markets and things, and that's what started it off really. Because I love all the old vintage patterns, the lacy patterns, all 2-ply and 3-ply yarn, and sort of moving on from that's where the name came from. And what I like to do is sort of traditional designs, but then with a modern twist, if you like. So I love all the sort of the old-fashioned designs. I love baby rompers, I love the footed tights and leggings that they had in the 40s and 50s, traditional baby bonnets. And that was where I saw my vision going.
So did you used to make, because every time that I've ever tried to make a vintage pattern, I've gotten very confused by the instructions. It seemed like they wrote their patterns very different back then. Have you made the vintage patterns, or do you
I have made up a few. But I find the yarn weights are very, very different.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are done with very, very fine yarn. So what I
Mm-hmm.
like to do is study diagrams and photographs and then make something with modern weights, modern yarns that sort of replicates or copies sort of that basic baby layette, but I mean that sort of suits a modern baby, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you said that you collect vintage patterns and that's kind of where your vision went, I can definitely see that in your designs where it has that kind of black and white picture feel to it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Especially the blue and white nautical one. That one really kind of screams that
Yeah,
vintage.
it's timeless, isn't it? It's that, that's gonna suit somebody, and then you could make it for your child or for your grandchild and still keep, the pattern would still be relevant in a few years' time.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. So do you have any I'm gonna flip real quick. Do you have any books? Do you do a lot of reading? Do you do TV watching? Are you mostly an outside crocheter? Because everybody has their different happy place when they're doing their work.
When I'm here, I sit where I am now, surrounded by the all the squishiness in the background. And I have a view of the garden from I'm actually upstairs in the house, but
Okay.
I have a view of the garden from up here, which is quite nice. And when I'm at the cottage, I'm, weather permitting, down outside, down on the rocks, or in the we are the cottage is very close to the sea, so even if we're in the garden of the cottage, it's the clean air and everything.
Yeah,
if it's
absolutely.
raining, I sit on the sofa at the cottage and watch the seagulls as I'm playing away.
That's awesome. So do you watch any TV at all? I only ask because I'm a true crime junkie.
Yeah, well, I always say to my husband that if anything happened to him, nobody would find him.
Oh my gosh, that's absolutely
I
hilarious.
could have a degree in true crime.
My husband walks in the door every day because I always have some kind of documentary going on, and he's like, you're studying for later. So yes, and he said, if I ever go missing, they're gonna have to look at you because you've been watching too much. I said, you know what? I just don't have the physical energy to do that. As much as I see that these people have to go through, no thanks.
Yeah. One thing that I have just finished watching is Daisy Jones and the Six.
I haven't watched that. What is that one about?
Fabulous for crochet designs. All the 1970s granny squares and
Nice
tops and everything. I watched it purely for the crochet.
Is that one about a band?
It is.
Okay. I wanted to flip back to, you were talking about how you had a brain tumor. When we were chit-chatting before we started, had talked about that a little bit and how you used crochet as like therapy for you in your recovery. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I had discovered the brain tumor. I started with dizziness, and my balance was a bit off. And after I'd fallen over a few times, they investigated it and located a brain tumor in my inner ear.
Oh my goodness.
So I had surgery to have it removed, and they completely removed my inner ear, and the tumor had been compressing my brainstem and the part of my brain that dealt with sort of processing. I'm completely fine. It's completely gone, and I didn't need any further treatment. Although I am now classed as disabled as a result of the surgery. But when I was in recovery, I lost my ability to number sequence, and having previously been an accountant, it was a bit something that I desperately wanted to get back.
Oh, sure.
And crochet was, although I could knit and crochet, and they said to me, if you can do that, that's brilliant for number. But because I was getting so tired, crochet was a lot easier to put down than knitting.
Mm-hmm.
So sort of if you're knitting, you sort of get to the middle of a row and you have to carry on. Whereas
You really
crochet,
do.
you can sort of pick up and put down,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where it started. So the repetitiveness of the crochet, sort of I started, built it up gradually over a few months, and then, of course, because I couldn't go back to my job, the crochet took off. And
Yeah, no, that's
when I was,
amazing.
and
It's one.
then I opened an Etsy shop, and the rest is history.
It's really one of those. The hashtag goes around, the crochet is therapy, and it's become far more, I think, prevalent in the online community where people view crochet and knitting too, but speaking as crochet designers, crochet as a way of either dealing with stresses or recovering, but like something like that's amazing that it's actually like a tool that you use to come back to something that came so naturally before.
Yeah, I fully appreciate that for mental health reasons, crochet is a
Hmm.
fabulous thing, and I speak as a crocheter from from the point of view as somebody who crochets,
Right.
that yes, I can see its obvious benefits, but I am living proof that it has physical benefits as well.
Hmm.
It helped me enormously recover from life-saving surgery,
Absolutely.
and it's as simple as that.
That's amazing. And one thing I noticed when I started designing, because I've always been very bad at math, I always considered myself kind of a math idiot. Um, I barely squeaked out of, all the algebra and stuff like that in regular school. But when I started designing and really crocheting on a regular basis like that, I noticed how natural the math seems to be, and it just comes to you. It's like a different application.
Yeah,
So it seems to click maybe easier. Do you
yeah.
feel like you could use, and this is, I'm just throwing this out because the thought popped in my head. Do you think that this would be something that could be used as maybe a teaching tool for
Yes,
math?
certainly. It's an interesting concept, but yes, I mean, I remember I'm of an age where knitting was a thing that you did at school,
Yeah.
and we did knitting, and we did counted cross stitch
Mhm.
embroidery as part of the curriculum when I was small, and I think there's something that we've lost in that.
Mm.
Maths is an everyday thing.
Mhm.
The way that maths is taught, certainly in this country nowadays, is without the direct application of it. And I think we've lost something over the years.
I completely agree with you.
Mm.
The being it well, not only just even the business end, because you have to take business classes in order to be taught business math, which
Mm.
business math is really just simple math.
Yeah,
And you have to, but see, over in the US, things like handwork like that, that's not a thing in our schools. And I'm 51, so I think we're probably kind of close in age. And that was not something that I was ever brought up on. So
mm.
I find it extremely interesting that in your primary school, that was something that was taught, because I think that that would be an amazingly valuable tool, because not only does it, teach you math parts, but also like that high eye hand coordination,
Hmm.
because that's something that they're anymore now. You almost have to put your kid into school knowing their colors, their numbers, and everything already. They don't get taught that stuff anymore in the really little classes.
Yeah,
You have to
no,
know.
yeah, it's the same here. There's a greater expectation on. I mean, my daughter and daughter-in-law both
Mhm.
teach primary, sort of
Oh, okay.
small children, um, and they say the amount of children that come into school that aren't ready
Mhm.
to take on the curriculum that can hold up a whole class, because
Yes.
so many children haven't learned the basics. But back in my when I was at primary school, you went to school and learned those basics.
Mhm.
It
Same
seems,
here.
yeah, we've lost something over the years, I do think.
I think that would crafts like that would be such an amazing tool to reintroduce. I mean, obviously, I don't know that I have the clout to, have that reinstated or anything like that, because it would take so much to get something like that put back into a school. But even like craft clubs and things like that would be really interesting, because they've even removed home ec from much of our school system as well. And it's all about testing and stuff like that. Do you find that the school
Yes,
system
it's the same here. I mean, I'm almost 60, so I'm a little bit older than you. But yes, I did home economics at school. I learned to cook and iron and how to
sew and all kinds of things.
Yeah, the whole shebang. And yeah, so my nieces are in. My youngest niece is just sort of coming through secondary education now, and it's all about resistant materials, technology, and testing and design rather than practical application.
Yeah, because you find that so many of these kids come out of school and they can't take care of themselves. That was one thing. I homeschooled my kids, so I always had mine with me. But one of the things that I decided I was not going to allow to happen, excuse me, was that my daughter naturally wanted to cook, and she naturally wanted to do all of these things. My son was a little more resistant because his brain wasn't there. And the older he gets, the more he's interested in learning how to cook for himself. But at the time he was a teenager, he was doing his own laundry. He was doing, excuse me, I'm sorry, my throat just went on me. He was taking care of all of his own personal needs like that, because I'm not going to send a kid out into the world that can't do anything for himself.
Yeah, I'm the same. When mine all left to go to university, and they were self-sufficient, they could take care of themselves. And I think that's an essential parenting, essential aspect of parenting, is that you have to send them out into the world.
Absolutely.
My only regret is none of them are in the slightest interested in yarn.
My daughter showed about 5 minutes of interest in yarn, and she made one little wristband thing. She said, "I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore."
Yeah, my daughter rings up and says, "Mum, can you? Yeah, we need something altering. Can you come and hang the curtains?" And she knows how, but she's just never applied herself.
Yeah, my daughter is like, "Hey," actually, I tend to offer more than she asks, only because she knows that I'll make it for her. But I usually find stuff that I want to make. There was a pattern on Lovecrafts that I fell in love with, and I made the sweater. I didn't care for the instructions on the assembly, and it was a lot harder in the end. So when I sent it to her, she's like, "Oh, Mom, this is amazing. I need this in this color and this color and this color." I'm like, "No, I'm sorry, honey. That's the only one you're getting." Because I did not enjoy making that. Do you find that your kids like to get things do they have you make things for them?
They have done. They wear hats that I make, but anything more than that, no, they tend to. They do put the children in the jumpers.
That's good though. That's good though, because the hand there was something back in the early 2000s. Hand knits need to be used, because it was just, you would give away these dishcloths or whatever, and people would never use. They're so beautiful. I can't use them. No, use them.
Yeah, I'm very much. I mean, all my dishcloths are handmade.
Mine too.
Because that's what I do when I'm watching the telly at night, because I'm a fidget. And people say, "Oh, have you made this?" And they're frightened of wiping up spills with it. That's what they're for. If I make a lot of sort of shower scrubbies and things like that, and people say they're so beautiful, but I'd rather people use them and said, "Please make me another one."
Yes. You know what? I'm happy to make more. I would rather that you use what I give you. I mean, to me, that's more of an honor than you putting it in a frame and saying, "Oh, this is just absolutely gorgeous." Well, thank you. I appreciate that, but use it.
Yeah, I think
go ahead.
Because we work with such tactile things, you want to think that people will also touch them and feel them and love them.
Do you, that's a good segue into, do you find that you're more of a process knitter? Like you, I say knitter, crocheter, you know, the same thing, fiber artist. There are some people who make it because they like the whole process of the project. Some people mm, do it because they want the end product. Some people, you know, it's a tactile thing. How do you feel? Like, where do you sit in that?
Um, I'm a fidget, so I like to always have something to do. I can't sit still.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be doing something, and that's where it sort of really meets me. But I love the process. I
Mm-hmm.
love thinking of something in my head and then thinking, oh, well, I could make that this way or that way.
Mm-hmm.
I like being inspired by something that I see on the television or something I see in a magazine. I think, actually, I could crochet that. Or,
Mm-hmm.
but then I also love seeing my things being used. You know,
Mm-hmm.
babies, photographs of babies wearing cardigans that I've knitted, or you know, or yeah, that's just the ultimate compliment, isn't it? Is that when it is
Absolutely.
used. Mm.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to ask you about your design aesthetic. So you started with your hats and you're like in that, you're in that baby design world. How do you feel your design aesthetic has changed since you started? And do you feel like you're moving into more solidly into the vintage baby wear, or do you have other things that you have in like the peripheral?
I'm about 50-50. A lot of my current designs, I see yarn or see colours of yarn, and that sparks me off. But I also am now at the point where I have a couple of yarn sponsors. So I have a couple of
Mhm.
yarn companies who will send me their new yarns and new colours, and one of which do sell some of my designs.
Okay.
So that's sort of taking me in another direction. And I've recently been invited to submit briefs on a couple of open design calls. That's one of
Nice.
which I'm sort of doing this afternoon. Um, so again, that's now taking me in another. I've not had anything published in sort of in that way as yet, but that's another direction that is now taking me. So I'm very relaxed about it. I think
Mhm.
it will lead me where it wants to go.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a
and
good way to go about it.
mm, so I'll just enjoy the journey.
You have to. I mean, there you have to find your joy. And if you I find myself hitting those walls of overwhelm because I feel like there's too many things pushing down on me and I find myself walking backwards. Do you ever have to kind of just remove yourself from the whole world? Do you know what I'm talking about? That crochet world where it's that grind of social media, it's that grind of, you know, keeping up with and serving your people, but not burning yourself out.
Um, yes, and I mean, I took a total social media week off last week
That's
because my
wonderful.
one of my grandsons was here, because it was the school holidays over here, and his mum had gone away for a few days, so we had the grandson here. So I did nothing social media.
Mhm.
However, I did still crochet because I crochet for pleasure as well.
Mhm.
So I have sort of various projects that I take on that I do purely for pleasure. So I have blankets around the house and um, clothes that I've made for myself that I do. And I try and keep, now it's evolved into what it is at the moment. I try and keep those two things separate because I never want to lose my love of crochet,
Absolutely.
you know, and I think if now it is my job per se, it would
Mhm.
be very easy to concentrate too much on the work side of things and lose the love for it. And I never want to do that. So I have a clear definition between the two.
That's awesome. That's very good. Boundaries are super important.
Mm.
Do you have any tips that you would want to give to new designers? Like, what would you focus on? What would you let go?
I think that you should love everything that you do. If
Mhm,
you know, the designing came as a secondary to me from an absolute love of crochet.
mhm,
And all my designs, I have made things that I loved first. And I think if I love them, then somebody else will love them.
mhm,
And also going back to the love of the craft, if my patterns can be used to introduce somebody to crochet, and I like the fact that I aimed the fact that my patterns could be used equally by somebody who's just started crochet or had been
mhm,
crocheting for years, and I would have something in my pattern that would please the whole spectrum. And I
mhm.
think that's very important, that it doesn't become a chore. It's a hobby, and a hobby should enhance your life.
Absolutely.
It should be enjoyable, and that's my right down at the heart of it.
Yeah, that's great advice because it is so important as a designer that you love what you're doing. And if you are creating a crochet business out of what you're doing, that you remember why you started in the first place.
Mhm.
You had said that you design, and if you like it, then there's going to be somebody else who likes it. And it seems like your patterns are very, like we had talked about, being very timeless and vintage and unique. Do you feel like it's important to maintain that individuality as far as style is concerned? Do you ever feel yourself being drawn into, um, um, I want to say bandwagon patterns that just everybody's making it? It's everywhere on the internet. Everybody's got to make this particular stuffy or this particular cardigan or this, you know what I mean?
um I do, but again, that's with my hobbyist head on.
Okay.
I'm currently working on a blanket, which one of the UK yarn companies has brought out,
Mhm.
a crochet along for the King's coronation, and
Mhm.
it's a commemorative blanket, and that's all over social media at the
Okay.
moment, and I'm partaking in that. But
Absolutely. I mean,
that's as a
being a
hobbyist,
designer.
yeah. But as a designer, I think one of the fundamental things that's allowed me to design is that I want my individual style to be in those
Mhm.
pictures. So, and I think
Mhm.
that's important, not to be swayed by trying to design something that,
Mhm.
yes, may have mass appeal at the moment, but isn't quite within your comfort zone. I think
Mhm.
you have to stick to your own vision. Otherwise, you're not designing for yourself, you're copying, or and
Yeah.
I think that's very important. It's that you have to be true to yourself and
Definitely.
believe in yourself.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. And if I want, if I'm going to leave somebody with a final thought, it would just be that you maintain your uniqueness.
Yeah.
Um, because you started doing it, or you created your design because you had a vision, and sticking with that vision is super important. All right. Well, I am going to we've been going about 45 minutes. We've been chit-chatting, which
No
is
one.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, are there any final thoughts that you would like to leave with the people today?
No, I just thank you for listening to me drone on.
Absolutely. It's been so much fun finding out about
Yeah,
you.
it's lovely, and I think it's things like this. I mean, thank you for inviting me, but it's lovely to see and meet people that you have only met in a virtual way before.
Yeah.
And I mean, as I say, we have had contact because you've sort of previously bought my patterns and done
Mhm.
my designs, which is wonderful and wonderful to see, and a great compliment. But it's lovely. I mean, I've caught up on your other podcasts as well and met other designers through that. So
Isn't that fun?
it's nice, and it's a bit different from the standard social media. It's another forum.
Yeah, because if you've watched the other ones and you've probably heard me talk about community over competition, it's something that I firmly believe in because it's so much fun to put a face behind those designs. I mean, like, sure, we can look at the glossy picture online and we can get an idea of who you are, but talking to you, hearing your voice, hearing your accent, it forms an entire person for me.
Yeah, me too.
And I love that.
I
Well,
agree.
Kristin, I so appreciate you joining me today, and I would love to have another conversation with you whenever you want one. We'll talk about, your next pattern coming up, and I can't wait to see that bonnet. That thing is just adorable. You
Yeah,
want to
well,
flash that baby again? Oh, that is so cute.
yeah, that'll be ready soon.
Yeah, I can't wait for that one. So, like I said before, we're going to have all of your links in the description below on the YouTube. Um, version podcast. My brain just absolutely blanked on the YouTube connection, and we will make sure to connect with you again, Kristin. And I'm going to go ahead and don't go anywhere. I want to say a proper goodbye. So hang on just a second. I'm going to let everybody
Okey-dokey.
else go. Thanks. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Buzz with Busy Crochet as we talked with Kristin Jones from the Vintage Crochet Company. I hope that you learned a lot about her. I loved getting to know her, and I hope that you go look at her website and see her patterns and all of that stuff. Just love on her. Give her some love. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. I keep stumbling over my words. Have a great day. Oh no, end broadcast. There we go.